Well, actually, one of the very interesting things for me is looking back at the kind of presentations that I was giving a couple of years ago, is that I had to start them by making the case for what we were doing, and I don't have to do that anymore. So that's very exciting. So what I'm going to do today is just briefly introduce AlertMe. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, because I want to talk a little bit about the market dynamics that we see happening and a few things that we think are going to happen over the next few years. So briefly, AlertMe, for those of you that don't know it, is an online home energy management platform. It exists in your home and it exists in the cloud. And it basically means that as an AlertMe user, as a consumer, and I'm glad to hear the word consumer being used increasingly today, consumers with AlertMe can see where their energy is going for the first time, all the time, wherever they are, whatever they're doing. Because we all spend an increasing amount of our attention online. So the AlertMe philosophy is to put information and control online, which of course doesn't just mean the web, it means your smartphone, increasingly things like your TV, Facebook, iPhone apps, everything is going online, and that's where we put the information and control. So we have what in the telco world is quite a long track record of more than 2 years. Background, obviously I realise that in the utility world that's just a brief moment, but we do really have paying customers in the UK who've been using AlertMe for more than 2 years, and that's invaluable in terms of not only proving the technology and making technologies like Zigbee work in real people's homes and real people's lives, but it also means that we have paying customers acting as a reference in terms of the business model, so that channel partners can now adopt what we're doing with quite low risk, because they can see that we have paying customers that go on paying and that like what we do. As a consumer-oriented company, and our customer is definitely the consumer. I mean, even if we sell through channel partners, it's always the consumer that we're working for. It's very important that we have this close B2C customer base as well as going through channel partners, so that we can really interact very closely with customers, and our service constantly evolves in response to how people use the service, and we proactively engage with consumers in many different ways. So we have a very active customer forum where people discuss stuff. We run surveys. We obviously do a lot of analytics on our customer data. One of the great things about an online service is we can see how people use our technology and make it better. And in terms of smart meters, which we've heard a lot about today, and I'm sure we'll hear a lot more, what this does is it gives us a lot of learning ahead of smart meter deployment about how consumers engage with household energy. And this learning is relevant not only in terms of making smart meter deployment a success, but also once smart meters are deployed, what's the journey after that? Because smart meters are really just the beginning. So briefly, this is the kind of experience that an AlertMe user has. I mean, different people have different experiences. Some people use their phones a lot, other people use the web a lot. But essentially, wherever you are, it's an easy self-installed consumer solution that makes energy visible in your life. Shows you what you're consuming right now, shows you what you're consuming historically, puts it into context, delivers, as Chris was saying, actionable information that the consumer can use. So just to move on to the bigger picture now about what we see happening in the market as a whole and the market drivers. If we start off with the bottom right, the utilities, clearly utilities have for decades been selling a commodity and they've been operating in effectively a zero-sum game market where they can take customers from their competition, but they can't really create a new market. Telcos, you might be quite surprised to see them on this slide at all, but telecoms companies, and by that I mean sort of BT, Vodafone, Sky, and possibly even including retailers as well increasingly, they don't think like this at all. They're not used to living in a zero-sum game. As Chris mentioned, Sky created a new market completely from scratch, which now has 10 million customers in little more than a decade. And they're used to their core proposition becoming commoditized within a few years, whether it's fixed line, mobile phone, broadband. They know that they've only got a few years to make decent money out of that before the next thing has to come along. So these are the very agile players, and what they're always looking for is ways to differentiate the rich bundle that they offer to consumers, because you can now buy obviously not just one service from them, but an increasing number of services. And we see energy, household energy, as being another service that these players can offer to their customers and really differentiate and really disrupt the market. And they'll move very quickly. They are moving very quickly now. And over the next couple of years, we'll see profound change in the consumer market driven primarily by telcos. Top right, government, we've heard a lot about that today. I won't really emphasise any of those points. I think they've all been covered already today. But the most important of all, we think, are the consumers. If you look at all the big revolutions that have happened in our lives over the last 50 years, from jet air travel to mobile telephony, broadband, and so on, it's all been consumer-driven. When consumer pull is ignited, it can drive fantastic change through. And as somebody mentioned earlier, if consumers are not engaged, they will actively resist things. So, you know, an ugly grey box that appears in your house, starts spying on you, and starts making your energy bills bigger, is not going to go down well with consumers. But there's no reason that smart meters need to be seen in that light. With a bit of intelligent planning, we can actually make them the consumer's friend. The point about bill shock there is just that at the moment it's very hard for UK consumers to even know what they pay for energy, but from the end of this year, utilities will be forced to give their customers an annual bill, which for the first time will make people realise the average UK consumer spends more than £1,200 a year on energy, and under various scenarios, Ofgem believe that's going to go up substantially over the coming decade. So, unlike the wonderful Moixer slide, I've only got a few names on here, but clearly I could probably put about 50 names on here, but I just wanted to talk about some of the trends we see happening in the market. So on the vertical axis, we've got things going on in the US and Europe, and it's interesting, the US is ahead on some things and behind on others. The focus in Europe is more around overall carbon reduction. The focus in the US has historically been more on the utilities problems of peak demand and so on, but they're converging. So along the horizontal axis, we've got a sort of journey that takes us from simple in-home displays of the sort that the utilities have been giving out over the last year or so, towards, as we move to the right, towards an increasingly sort of connected proposition, where you can plug your display into a laptop or something and upload your data, and then to a truly online offering. So we've got players like Google, and we were Google's first consumer partner in Europe on energy, and Microsoft Home, who have pure online offerings, so they realise they can use the power of their platform to help deliver information and empower the consumer. And really, these two come together in the connected platform, which is where we're focused. And from the other side, from the right-hand side of this slide, we've got what have typically been the sort of home automation players, the Control 4s and so on. Control 4's average selling price is I think about $2,400 in the US at the moment. So this is really mainly for rich people and geeks, but it's going to come down market. And so there were a lot of Control 4 recently raised a lot of money to push them into the energy space in America, and that's very much about ubiquity and mass market. So some very interesting things happening in the market. Just some thoughts about the next few years. Clearly, a big thing in everyone's mind regarding smart meters is how future-proof can they be, and how future-proof do they need to be. There's an opportunity for a sort of tactical win to solve some short-term problems, but is there also the opportunity for the strategic win? The battle of the gateways, what I mean by that is that all homes in Britain now have mobile in them. Mobile penetration is more than 100% in the UK. 65% or so have broadband. We'll have the smart meter as yet another gateway into the home. We'll have set-top boxes, which will increasingly be connected. So we have an increasing number of gateways into the home, and to some extent, whoever owns those gateways will own the customer. So I think there's going to be a bit of a battle of the gateways about who delivers what services through these gateways to the consumer. In the smart metering world, in the UK, when people talk about the smart meter HAN, the smart meter home area network, what they mean is that the network that connects the gateway to the electricity meter and the gas meter and the in-home display. Now that's not what a consumer calls a HAN. Those 65% of homes with broadband already have a HAN, it's called Wi-Fi. And in fact, whether it's Wi-Fi or connected Ethernet or home plug or whatever, consumers have an IP network in their home already, and that world moves at the speed of the consumer world. So, consumer devices and services will be brought out in weeks and months as the time goes on, and that's a very different pace of change from the utility world. Nevertheless, I think there are great opportunities to join those two worlds together. It can hugely benefit the utilities and the consumer if these two worlds talk intelligently. Added value services is really that a lot of the utilities we talk to in the UK, for example, are viewing smart meters as a very big cost without a commensurately large benefit. What they're keen to do is to wrap a whole load of value-added services around the smart meter deployment to make sure that they actually become revenue generating for them. We've touched on microgeneration. That's just one of the things that are happening in homes over the next few years. And again, as in every other sort of energy consumption or production, it's all about visibility, making it clear to consumers what the financial deal will be, and balancing the account. So once you're a producer of energy as well as a consumer, what does that actually mean for you? Before you buy solar panels, you'd probably like to know, what will that mean for me, given where I live, given the roof space I've got, given my energy consumption profile, how much money will I actually make, when will the thing start to pay back? And finally, and I hadn't actually seen Moix's presentation before now, there's a bit of overlap here, which I think is an interesting point in itself. Analytics is an area that's increasingly important. So less and less is it about the energy itself, and more it's about the data about the energy. That's where the value is, and that's where a lot of the players in this space are focused. So a specific, a general example of what I mean by that, and Chris has already sort of taken us through this to some extent, is that if we look from the left-hand side of that slide, the journey begins with capturing data. We capture second-by-second data in the home and put it online. You can store that information, you can present it in simple ways, totals and graphs and that sort of stuff. Frankly, none of that is very useful or engaging to the consumer. Where it gets much more useful is where you start to use a lot of compute power and heuristics and algorithms to boil down all that data into interesting and engaging and actionable information and control. And to put a specific example on that, which is exactly the same example as Chris used, slightly embarrassingly, next time we'll need to coordinate our slides, but maybe again that makes a point. I think this is some data from my house at the beginning of May. We've got a retrofit clamp capturing 1 second data at the meter. You can then display that data wherever you want, on your smartphone or the web, whatever, as a graph, but frankly that doesn't mean very much to most people. You can present summary information like how much has my house used today or whatever, but frankly that's not terribly useful. But where it gets much more useful, to use exactly the same example, was that on this particular day my washing machine was run once, it cost me 44p. If every day was like that, my washing machine would cost me £160 a year. I've run it at 60 degrees, and so when we get onto the user experience side, we can boil all this down, and if we can detect this, and we can do so reliably, and we have something useful to say, we can then tell the user that if they did a wash at 40 degrees instead of 60 or 30 degrees instead of 60, they could save a specific amount of money based on their particular lifestyle, their particular appliance, and that's potentially very useful to them. So just in conclusion, there's a lot going on in the home over the next decade, in terms of online connectivity, smart appliances, connection to cloud services, smart meters arriving, microgeneration arriving, electric vehicles arriving, home energy storage arriving, and this has the potential to make the consumer's life worse, to make things more expensive and more complicated. But I think it also has the potential, if we play our cards right, to make the consumer's life better, more convenient, simpler, and cheaper. So that's what we're trying to do. Thank you very much indeed.